and there are a couple of aspects. One I want to touch on very quickly. One of our major recommendations, which isn't before this committee, but is for the creation of an Assistant Secretary of State for cyber, because international norms and expectations are an important part of this discussion. And if we're not at that table, we can lose when they are talking about standards or whatever. This is a place where we've lost some ground. So that's one of our recommendations. But I think what I'd like to say about the deterrent issue is that there was a great deal of discussion about this. And it grew for me out of many of the hearings that you and I have sat through over the last 4 or 5 years, where we haven't had a deterrent policy. We've been purely defensive. And what we are saying is that there's a level, everybody knows that there would be a response if there was an attack on critical infrastructure. But the question is, what happens if there's an attack on our election, or what happens if there's wholesale theft of intellectual property? What's the response? And because there hasn't been, and because, as you point out, this is a cheap way to make war, then we've become a cheap date. We've become an easy target. And what the Commission suggests is there needs to be a new declaratory policy that there will be a response. It may not be cyber. It may not be kinetic. It may be sanctions. It may be any part of the national power toolkit, but that there will be a response. And another sort of wrinkle of this that's very important is 85% of the target space in cyber is in the private sector. It's not the Army and the Air Force. They will be under attack, cyber attack, but the target space is in the private sector. And that's where we have to really develop relationships. This is a whole new way of thinking. One of the things we talk about is the intelligence agencies being able to share with the private sector what they're learning about cyber attacks on SCADA systems at power plants. So you're absolutely right. The discussion of the deterrent idea was an essential part and a lot of discussion in the Commission, but we concluded that there had to be some deterrent. It can't simply be defensive, patching, make it more difficult, cyber hygiene. All those are important, but we wanted our adversaries, when they're contemplating a cyber attack on the United States, to say, but what will they do to us? We want that to be part of their risk calculus. A formative moment for me was when we were interviewing the head of NSA 3 or 4 years ago in this committee. And I asked him if there was any deterrent to a foreign adversary taking these kinds of actions. And his answer I've never forgotten was, not enough to change their risk calculus. And that, to me, is an admonition and a warning to us that we have to not only defend ourselves, but our adversaries have to know that we can and will respond in such a way as to make them regret their attack. Thank you.